Mum started to get sporty and do these weird exercise stretch things. I think it's the motorhome version of astronaut exercise.
We headed off through the steep streets into Barcelona towards the Gaudi Cathedral. There was one very long steep hill that we walked up. We came around the corner. There stood the Gaudi Cathedral. It has so much detail on it and is one of the biggest cathedrals in the world. It was designed by Gaudi and building started in 1882. It is still not finished but should be in 2040. After leaving the cathedral, we carried on towards the port down one of the big avenues. There was a girl who was jumping over a pole on skates, and there were two guys blowing enormous bubbles.
Parrot cam.
Apparently, Barcelona's Las Ramblas is the busiest street in the world. We could see why. There was a heap of weird buskers dressed up, standing still, and lots of stalls with souvenirs.
Well, the motorhome's about 2 k's behind us. And this morning we walked down to the cathedral down on the left, and further on down to the waterfront to that big white building, and then across along the waterfront and back up La Ramblas, which is one of those green leafy strips, back up to here. And we reckon we've done about 20 kilometres today.
It was our last night in Spain on the way north to Switzerland. The night before we had been robbed in a busy beach park while we were sleeping, so we had to increase our security by tying our doors together.
That there is a rather long riverboat, isn't it?
Yeah.
And where are we, Matthew?
I don't know.
Avignon.
We got to this awesome park right by the river and walked into town. It was a real surprise to find it bustling with people, and we had arrived in the middle of a festival.
Cocaine stained night. Turns and tides in the bonds that we were. 'Cause when it's time to go, it ain't all that you own, it's the hands that you have held.
We drove on through the endless fields of bright purple lavender in Provence. To this day, we still don't know why the little stone buildings were in the middle of the fields, but we think it might have been to store all the tools the farmers would need to harvest the lavender. There was a heap of stop-offs, and we stopped at almost every one of them so Dad could get some and sniff it. He likes the smell of lavender. The coast of Provence has some of the earliest known sites of human habitation in Europe. Primitive stone tools dating back to 1 million years BC have been found in the Grotte du Valinet. Some of the first fireplaces in Europe were found at Terra Amanta in Nice.
We wound our way through the mountains and came across a turquoise green river with people playing in it. We decided to park and have a swim. We walked down to the river and jumped off a rock with lots of water gushing through a crack, forcing us down into the water.
We were getting a bit sick of driving through these mountains. Once, it was so windy, we took 3 hours to do 100 kilometres. Anyway, we were driving along and we saw an amazing looking river with some swimming holes. We took a welcome break and went for a swim. There was one bit where there was a super fast water bend I liked going round. When we were leaving, I sat in some rocks that were like a seat under a mini waterfall, and water blasted out from all around me. We walked back up the hill and drove away from the river.
We just stopped for a swim in a gorge, and now we're driving on through the French Alps up towards a lake near a town called Briancon. I'm sure that's not how you say it though.
We were nearing the end of the mountains and Dad popped into the supermarket to get some baguettes. He came out with a plastic box of pétanque.
So we're in the French Alps now and stopped at a supermarket to get some food as we came into here. And we bought a fun little game of pétanque. And we're doing the championship.
We wound our way up the mountains, and there were a few drop-offs where you could have a sudden fatal death. There were so many waterfalls that it looked like veins running down the mountains. It was a great view from the lookouts. The mountains were green and some of them had ice on top of them. There were a few old brick bridges that you could drive over. We looked out of the window at the patches of white clean snow, asking Dad if we could stop for a snowball fight. We talked and had lots of fun in the back of the motorhome. The temperature dropped as we wound our way up the mountain, getting higher and higher. We parked at the top, which is 2,760 meters high.
Dad drove slowly along the road because it was raining very hard for the first time in weeks. As we turned into the road that led to our destination, us kids got super excited about arriving. We could use our proper steel pétanque balls that we had just bought in Briançon. This was the best campsite in the whole trip. It was right next to a clear, fast-flowing river in the middle of the French Alps. It stopped raining, so we decided to have a campfire. Daniel, Hannah, Ashley and I set off in the drizzle to collect wood for the fire and couldn't wait to sit around that night burning our marshmallows.
Bonjour!
Matthew, Dad and I went out to collect some wood for the fire and came back with armloads of it. Later on, after dinner, we were going to light the fire when Dad had a good idea. We tried to do a diesel trail and it was so safe it didn't work. We cooked marshmallows and ate lollies around the fire.
What are you doing, Daniel?
Caterpillar cam.
After driving out of one of the best campsites we had been to, we decided to pull into a nice town. We wanted to get a house like the ones in the town because they were made of varnished wood that sparkled in the sun.
We drove along, looking at the waterfalls flowing down the massive hills. We stopped on the side of the road to have a snowball fight with big hunks of snow, throwing them around and getting colder and colder when we were hit. On the way down the road, we had to stop because there was a bad accident. We carried on after an hour or so and camped at a cool spot by a lake.
We got out of the motorhome and went for a walk around Lucerne. We made some exciting inquiries about Swiss Army knives at a Victorinox shop, and Matthew and I bought one each. We had a great walk around the clean and tidy town and went right up to the castle before checking out some buskers and going back to the motorhome.
We noticed some people walking past us and asked a few people what was going on. They said that there was a big show going on in 5 days and today's the rehearsal. They also told us that the show happens every 50 years and most of the local people take part in it.
We got a park in Bern by a really fast-flowing river, but a man told us that it was too dangerous for kids. So instead of swimming, we walked into town. We weren't that excited about going, but it turned out to be a pretty cool town. We started walking back to the motorhome. Here's a fact. The town is called Bern, and the whole city was burnt down in 1405. After the fire, people rebuilt their houses with sandstone.
After spending ages driving, we went for a walk into Interlaken for a look around. We saw lots of paragliders and hang gliders taking people on flights, and we went into the tourist-packed town. On the way, I was making a song in GarageBand, and I left my music player in the open pocket of my pants, and it fell into the lake with the fish.
We set off from the town doing a small loop track around the mountains. It was a super tiring walk because all of it was steep. Dad made us walk a bit further up the hill so he could fly the drone, and while he was doing that, us kids were having snowball fights.
That doesn't look very far.
Come on, you nerd, try and hit us.
While we were walking down the hill, we came across a small bird enclosure. There were lots of different birds, but the owls were our favourite.
This, believe it or not, is an owl. What kind of owl is it? It's an albino. These are the two alcoholics. This is Weird Al Yankovic.
We got lost on our way back down through the village, so we had to cut our way through lots of fields.
We drove back to Interlaken and probably had the best day with busking in the whole of Europe. While Ashley and Hannah busked, the rest of us watched paragliders and hang gliders land. We always laughed when the hang gliders landed because they skimmed along the ground and ended a burnout. We stopped at a shop and bought some Swiss Army knives for a cheap price.
We left the clean and tidy Switzerland and crossed a memorably slowly moving bridge into Germany.
This is the bridge from Switzerland to Deutschland. It is not moving with the normal German efficiency.